Welcome back, South Asians. You're watching Good Evening South Asia. Now, it's about a different new South Asia, one envisaged by two notable personalities from the field of literature, Salina Hussain and Radha Chakravarti. It's about a region that can provide an equal platform for all, especially to all genders. Today in Beyond Headlines, we are discussing feminist writing from South Asia, particularly two anthologies that attempt to express a multiple woman voice. The two books in today's focus are Writing Feminism and Writing Freedom. Both incidentally carry the same subtitle, that is South Asian Voices. Now, before we connect to Radha Chakravarti, who is one of the editors over phone, here's what I found during my research about the anthologies. Well, the contributions to the anthologies have been made from across South Asian terrain, that is Nepal, Maldives, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bhutan as well as Afghanistan. The books are largely a compilation of works translated not only from national languages such as Urdu, Hindi, Bengali or Nepali, but also Tamil, Punjabi, Malayalam, Kashmiri, Oriya, Telugu, Marathi or Kokoborok. Now, despite the fact that the stories emanate from very diverse indigenous cultures, they all emote very commonly felt experiences, bringing forth the realization that there are several shared experiences among individuals belonging to this region. Now, we will be connecting to Radha Chakravarti, who is the editor of these South Asian Voices. Ms. Chakravarti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm very happy to be part of this program.
Right. To throw more light on South Asian Voices, first I am very intrigued to know, how did the idea come about?
Well, this is actually, this book is part of a larger initiative called Imagine a New South Asia, which is an initiative promoted by civil society activists, artists, media practitioners, academics and policymakers, all of whom feel the need to imagine into being a new South Asia where instead of focusing on tensions and differences and border demarcations, there is a need to build bridges of understanding and to create a more harmonious environment within South Asia without obliterating the distinctness and sovereignty of the different cultures who form the components of this configuration. So as part of this larger project, we were, Salina Hussain and I, my co-editor Salina D and I, we were approached by members of this initiative to pay special attention to the role of gender in this entire process of imagining a new South Asia, and that is how this book was born.
So, Ms. Chakravarti, how did you go about selecting these various, prose, poetry, or well as drama? How did you go about selecting them? Did you have any particular theme in mind? Because it's quite a hard task to kind of read and find out what kind of symbolizes a new South Asia. What did you have in mind when you say new South Asia?
Well, as I said, the first assumption we had is that South Asia is not a fixed entity. It is an idea created in the minds of people, and as such it can be changed, it can be developed in a positive direction through efforts made by people, members of civil society, and the conviction that literature can play a vital role in this process of rethinking South Asia. The book Writing Feminism is a collection of short stories, not only by women but also by men, because we believe that this whole question of looking at women's position in society and women's changing role in an emergent society is not a concern of women alone, but it's a concern that men and women share equally.
Right.
So that one of the distinctive features of this anthology is that we looked at the works of men as well as women in the selection process. Of course, in the other book that we did alongside called Writing Freedom, which is, as you say, an anthology that looks at multiple genres of writing, including fiction, drama, poetry, and so on, we followed the same idea of looking at the heterogeneity of South Asian cultures, which includes so many nationalities, languages, ethnicities, so many historical and political diversities, and to reflect these differences, to reflect this entire range was one of our aims. At the same time, to bring to the fore not only dominant voices, but voices heard less often from minority groups, from language groups that are usually less reflected in the publishing circuit. And therefore, in our selection process, we kept in mind that all the areas of this region, if possible, should be represented. We also formed an editorial advisory board comprising eminent members from the literary field of all the nations involved. And with their expert advice, and also through a great deal of reading and sifting, we went through this very difficult process of finalizing our selections for these two collections.
Right, Ms. Chakravarti, we will be talking in detail about the themes that you kind of kept in mind while selecting these stories. But on the other line, we have Ms. Nalini Rajan, who is a professor in India, also joining us. Ms. Rajan, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Right, we will be talking about feminist writing with you, but ma'am, just hold the line there. But coming back to you, Ms. Chakravarti, about the themes. Reading a bit about South Asian voices, writing feminism and writing freedom, there comes a lot of stories about oppression and suppression and a lot of gloom prevailing in all those stories. But would you say they inspire us reading the books after that?
I certainly think so, because underlying what you could call perhaps the pessimistic or dystopian vision which emerges in many of the stories, which reflect some of the harsh social realities that have obviously inspired the writers to pick up the pen. Underlying these is the vision and the possibility of imagining an altered state, without which I don't think these stories would have been written at all. And I think that is the special aspect of literature which makes it stand apart from other kinds of writing, other kinds of social documentation, that dystopianism can go hand in hand with an implicit utopianism. And it is not as if every item in these stories are negative or pessimistic. For instance, I'm looking at stories where, for instance, the writer, a woman decides to become a writer. A story like Manjushri Thapa's Tilled Earth, where a woman decides to start a new life in an alien country, even though it wrenches her to leave her old life behind. The stories of new beginnings, stories of women asserting themselves, stories of women finding their voice. These certainly are as much part of these anthologies as the darker, more negative pictures of things as they are.
Ma'am, Ms. Chakravarti, just hold that thought over there and a comment on that, Ms. Rajan. Like, is feminist writing more about dystopianism, and through that look at utopianism?
Yes, I tend to agree with what Ms. Chakravarti has said right there, because I don't believe that everything that is written by women is necessarily gloomy and sad or anything. There is a lightness of being too. But that said, I do believe that, if you were to look at the history, for instance, of feminist writing in India, you find that, you go back, you find that what Dr. Susie Taru says is that the very first feminist tract that we had was in Marathi by a low-caste woman writer called Tarabai Shinde, who wrote against marriages, against widowhood. You know, the fact that women are treated so poorly, whereas men have absolutely no problems when they are widowed. But the problem here is, after that, she was silenced. And I think that what Mr. Chakravarti said here about women finding their voice again, or women struggling. There are struggles, and the struggles will vary from woman to woman. You know, some women find it easier to find their voice, and others don't, and that would depend on your location, isn't it, in society.
But Ms. Rajan, would you say that all feminist writings at the end of the day are autobiographical in nature?
Not necessarily. I think to begin with, I mean, if I were to look at my own experience, I realized that my first novel, yes, was autobiographical, and that's I think that's because you're trying to articulate something you don't understand about yourself. But I don't believe that every single woman who writes goes on that track. And I certainly know that by the time I've come to my third novel, it's completely fictional. I mean, I can't see any part of me. Perhaps there is something that is, unconsciously there.
Right.
And I'm sure it's true of many writers, and I can think of many writers even in the West, like Margaret Atwood, for instance. I mean, I see her as a feminist writer, and when she wrote this science fiction novel called Oryx and Crake, that was absolutely, that was set in the future, and very, very gloomy, yes. But it wasn't necessarily something to do with her personal experiences. It was something about humanity, our common humanity.
Right, Ms. Chakravarti, what would be your comment on that about autobiographical writing, about feminist writing being autobiographical?
A lot of feminist writing does have a strong autobiographical vein underlying the fictionalization sometimes of aspects of the author's own experience. But another important aspect of feminism is its recognition of the strength of collectivities and of writing as a representative of others like yourself, so that you rise above the personal and the personal becomes the political. I think that is one of the important things about feminism. The other thing is that not all women writers are feminists. Just as not all feminists are women, as we in our anthology have shown, men too can step into feminist territory if they begin to challenge the existing position of women.
Ms. Chakrabarti, what about men who are expressing their views and writing these kind of books or novels about feminist issues? What about that?
This is exactly what I'm saying, and some of this is reflected in our book, because we have several male writers in our book, in our anthology of feminism. You see, because you may be born biologically male or female, but feminism is a political position vis-a-vis gender inequality in society, and that is an issue men and women can address if they are concerned about this issue. And one of the stories, for instance, in writing feminism is by the Pakistani writer Zahida Hina. It is called Kumkum is Fine, and this is really a story about the granddaughter of the young child Minnie in Rabindranath Tagore's famous story Kabuliwala. And we see Minnie's granddaughter growing up in Afghanistan and experiencing life under the Taliban and writing a letter to her Dadima. And here we see a woman writer taking inspiration from an earlier male writer, Rabindranath Tagore, and a kind of intertextual dialogue going on about the historical shifts that have taken place between Tagore's time and ours, but at the same time drawing a link between the power of a woman's love and her capacity for caring in the present day as well as in the past. So we see how it is not necessary that all feminist writing emanates from women alone. Men too can provide shining examples.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Chakravarti and Ms. Rajan, for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
And giving us light on that topic about feminist writing, but definitely about talking about South Asian voices, writing freedom and writing feminism. It's if not anything else, but a true picture of how united South Asia is to get all those people from writing across South Asia together. Thank you so much for joining us.